Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm the Rambling Director, and today we are covering the second half of Season 1 of Netflix's Avatar, The Last Airbender, the live-action series. That is a mouthful. There's got to be an easier way to say all that. So, this is episodes 5 through 8. Now, I made a video already on the first 4 episodes, and I said overall that I liked it as a reinterpretation, a reimagining of Avatar, condensing the story and making season 1 significantly shorter, but ultimately keeping in a lot of the important story beats. The second half, I felt like it cut a lot more out. That being said, the things that it added, I did think were very, very good. So, just to recap, again, I think about this sort of more the way the Japanese live-action Death Note movies were done. Yeah, it changes a lot, and it condenses a lot of stuff into a very short amount of time, but for the way it does it, I actually found it quite compelling. Especially, and I did say this in the first review as well, but I want to reiterate because it only got better. I really like the relationship between Zuko and Uncle Iroh. I think it is very well represented in this show, but it adds some story beats in there by introducing some things a little earlier, such as bits and bobs of Uncle Iroh's backstory, which allows little things like Uncle Iroh to be more explicit in how he thinks of Zuko as sort of a pseudo-son. And so when Zuko tells him that his son would have been proud to have him as a dad, and the two of them embrace before Zuko goes off to what could be certain death, it's really very emotional. It's a nice moment that I actually think the original series could have used more things like that. I feel like in some ways, Zuko and Iroh's development really starts in season 2. I know they get development in season 1, but I just never feel like, how do I say it? I feel like there's a lot more that could have been done early on with them, and it was kind of as if they weren't really sure what to do with Zuko. I know I hear people say all the time, no, the whole thing was planned. I don't know. There's certain things that just don't seem like they were, and I feel like maybe there were hints that Zuko was going to be redeemed, but not that he was going to end up being the type of character he becomes. I won't spoil anything in case you've not seen the original series. But this does, I think, really set him up as almost that Shakespearean villain, tragic anti-hero sort of character that he becomes for real in season 2. I think it sets him up in this first season really well. There was something I'm still not sure how I feel about, and that's Azula. Everybody else is so perfectly cast, and I think that's a real strength of the show, because casting is really everything in something like this. Azula sticks out as somebody who just does not belong there. The actress is very good. She's doing a good job. There's nothing wrong with her. Even her costuming is really good. Her art, her martial arts, the special effects around her, all of that is good. But she's not Azula from the show. That being said, the more I thought about it, the more I kind of thought they're making Azula a bigger character off the bat. Again, that's another thing where it seems like the show, because it has the hindsight of the animated series, can make certain characters bigger earlier on because they already know what they're going to do with them. So I think the idea was to make Azula a more human character, more relatable, because it's true, in the animated show, her psychotic breakdown kind of comes out of nowhere. I know some people would disagree with me. Oh, yes, but if you read into it, if you really think about this little thing, no, it came out of nowhere. Okay? She goes completely unhinged, and it really, like, I know what they're trying to do. Of course, I've always known what they were trying to do, but it doesn't mean they did it well. This, I think, trying to humanize her and show the stress she's under from the beginning is a good idea, but but it makes her stand out as very different from her original character. But the idea of humanizing her is not a bad idea, because later on, when she becomes that sort of crazy person, we're going to really feel how, the stress of her father's anticipation, it kind of makes her actually more of a foil to Zuko. I didn't really want to see Azula as a more human character. I liked her being a psycho. I just think her coming completely unhinged at the end was a little bit out of nowhere. But turning her into a very human character who is doing all this to become, basically to eventually take over for her father. There's hints also that she wants her father's approval, more like Zuko. And that, I think, could loan itself later on to being even better than the animated show. But right now, it just sticks out as a major difference from the animated show that is kind of hard to look past because it's so totally not her character. I mentioned in my last review as well, I'm harkening back to that a lot, but it's because a lot of the things I mentioned in that get paid off in the second half of this series. So for instance, I said that although a lot of people were like, it's gonna be woke, it's not. There's not really any wokeness to this show, which is a good thing. I like that. But what I said in that last review was Katara in the original show, which again, the term woke didn't exist, but Katara in the original show was very woke. She was a really annoying feminist in the first season of the animated show. All of that has been cut out of this. So when she comes to the Water Tribe and she is confronted by the sexism of their culture, not allowing the women to learn combative skills of water bending, it actually is I think, personally speaking, I think it's a lot better because in the original animated show, it's just like, oh, here we go again. Another thing for Katara to complain about. Men are evil, blah, blah, blah. But in this, it actually, there is some little girl power moments in it, but again, it's just not as annoying because it's not being crammed down your throat. Seasons 2 and 3 get better in the animated series about that. But season 1 of the original, it's the thing about Katara that is annoying. Everything else about Katara is great. That one aspect of her is just annoying because it's never that maybe somebody has something else to teach her. Maybe she just needs somebody else's help. It's never any of that. It's always sexism. And I love that in this new show, they cut out almost all of that. And when there is the obvious girl empowerment message where they show all of the female waterbenders standing there, and Katara's like, they just want what you want, a chance to fight to save their culture. That stood really strong. It was really good. And again, it was so much better and more powerful than any of the girl power messages in the animated show. I thought it was a much more mature way of handling that topic and that situation. I liked the way that lots of people in the culture seemed to just kind of be like, yeah, look, it's annoying, but we just put up with it because that's what all of the elders say we have to do, okay? It's not so much that everybody is like dogpiling on her. And again, it doesn't come across as woke. It comes across as a legitimately good way of representing that moment that, again, is better than the animated series. I know you're not supposed to say that, but everything can have moments that are better than the original, and it doesn't mean the whole thing is better. There is this unbelievably cool effect where when the moon spirit has been killed and the moon disappears, the whole show turns black and white. But every time there's an explosion, the light from the explosion turns everything back to color. And as the light fades, it becomes desaturated again. I really like the confrontations with Zhao and how they're handled. I also really like Zhao's character development in this new iteration. I think it's very good. The actor who plays him is like, how do I say this? He's like an Asian John Malkovich. Every time he talks, I think he just sounds like John Malkovich. And even his facial expressions, he looks like John Malkovich. It's just really funny to me, but also he's very good. I really like that guy. Would have liked to have seen him as like the main villain in something. Maybe down the road, because he was really quite good. I think there's a few too many times when somebody will say something and Aang will just go, "You're right. I wasn't here. The world needed the Avatar, and I failed." And it's kind of the same monologue over and over again. That was just a little too much. And there are some moments where the exposition, it's a little too heavy. It almost holds our hands a little bit too much compared to the cartoon for kids, which kind of trusted you to be smart enough to figure some of this out. So that is definitely a point against it. And I meant to mention this in the part 1 of this review. There's some times when the kids, they're trying their best, and they are all very good actors. But there's a few times when the emotion doesn't quite hit, and it is their acting. Everything, the lighting, the camera angles, the color correction, even the lines they're saying, they're not bad, but the emotion doesn't quite hit. But again, I try to be a little more lenient for something like this because it's handicapped, this show, by being live action. I know a lot of people think about it the other way around. I don't. I think being animated is a huge advantage. Always. Every time being animated is a huge advantage over a live action. And there's a million advantages to it, but especially with the acting, because you can make the character... you can make them feel 80 emotions in 2 seconds. I think animation almost always has the advantage when it comes to emotional impact. But for what they were working with, overall, it wasn't a bad conclusion. When Aang fuses with the spirit and becomes the big monster, that went on a little too long. I feel like that should have been tightened up. I'd rather have had one really well-animated tsunami than to have him, for like 5 minutes destroying individual ships. That was a little much. Now, he does eventually send the big wave, but I don't know. I feel like just wrapping it up a little sooner would have been better. Also, the shots of Aang inside the monster, it's really goofy looking. I really like how they handled Zuko and Iroh's departure at the end as well, including the fight scene. Actually, the whole ending with Zuko was really good, including his fight with Katara. Now, you could tell they were mashing up a bunch of moments that were more spread out in the original series. Again, though, I really think that in terms of writing, this is a very good adaptation because they know exactly what to keep and what to lose and what moments can be combined together to make more coherent B-plots. And I think that it really works. If you're going to condense something, again, I keep going back to it, but it's the Death Note movie from Japan, both of them. There's 2. There's a third one, but I'm not counting that in this series. Those first 2 movies, they know exactly what to cut, what to extend out and allow to breathe, and which moments can be more kind of chopped up because there's just no need to focus on all of them. I think that was really a strength of this series, is that to fit it all into 8 episodes, which is like 4 times the amount of time that the Shyamalan movie had. They have 8 hours-ish to put in this entire season. And they compile these scenes together in a very coherent, flowing way without losing any of the really big, iconic moments, and also furthering the story in a way that people who have seen the original show will find something new, which they'll probably complain about because that's the internet, and people who have never seen it will still be able to follow it. You don't need to have watched the original series to understand what's going on. And that's a credit, because if this had been just made for people who had seen the original, In my book, that would have been a failure. Now, again, I know people are going to complain about all the new stuff, or complain about, well, why didn't you have this moment or that moment, which, they might have had to cut for time. Or they might say, you misrepresented this, or this moment was better in the cartoon. No friggin' duh. The cartoon had a lot longer. The cartoon, again, was animated. The cartoon was creating a whole new mythology which you have never heard of or seen, realized. They could do whatever they wanted and you couldn't complain about it. This is adapting something else, and you have to give it a grain of salt. You have to give it some slack. They are adapting something knowing they cannot please everybody. I was more pleased that they just decided to try to please someone rather than trying to make everybody in the world happy. Because to me, I don't feel like the show missed any of the major points of the first season of Avatar. On the other hand, it is really enjoyable to watch in and of itself, adding enough things to keep it fresh and new and justify its existence, while not changing enough to make me, as a really big Avatar fan, angry. I wasn't ever pissed off by any of the changes. But I did come at it from the perspective that this is not going to be perfect, and maybe they're trying their best, and I should just give them room to try something a little bit different in how they tell this story. Let me just close by saying this. I said it in the last video. If you think that this show is going to ruin the original Avatar, let me suggest you didn't actually like the original Avatar, because nothing can ruin it. It's timeless. It's perfect. It's one of the best shows ever made. It's not going anywhere. This is not deleting every episode of Avatar forever and replacing it. This is reinterpreting the story, and if you don't like it, just don't watch it.